Welcome to Eye on the Illini. Mike Cagley here with Kedric Prince. It is the post-game show after Illinois defeats Oakland 66-54 in a game that was hard to gather any rhythm. I think that's the way I classify this one, Ked. It went back and forth, up and down. I thought that it was hard for either team to get much pace going. What did you think about this game as you were watching it?
It was just ugly. It wasn't entertaining. The only positive thing that I can say that's really positive is that you won. It was just it was sloppy, poor shooting. They looked like they weren't motivated. It just looked bad to me. That's just my personal opinion. But it just, I don't know. And you can just tell from some of the feedback from people who are commenting on social media, well, it was ugly, but we got the win. And I guess that's the best way to look at it. But just uninspired. I'm still having some concerns about guys not being able to score because that's what they were brought in to do. And you've seen it after 3 games. And I'm not saying I'm panicking because it's only 3 games, but it would be nice to see some of those shots fall and go in.
Yeah, I think this team is at where you would expect an Illini team to be. They're getting better. The difference is you've just got so many pieces that have to learn to play together that it's not your typical Illini team. And they're going to have to deal with how do we get all these pieces clicking. And I thought Kasparis was struggled a little bit. He's shooting today, only had 4 points. They were all from the free throw line. I thought 6 rebounds, 3 assists, but I thought he could have had quite a few more assists. He just had some what we used to call killed assists because there were a couple times guys mishandled what I thought were pretty good passes or just misfired on open shots. And you certainly can't blame the guy who passed him the ball for that.
No, you can't. It was just a poor shooting night. I get it. I understand it. It's happened before, Mike. But he is a guy that, from a shooting standpoint, I like to see some of those shots fall. I don't want to repeat myself and say the same thing, but I want to see him. I want to see some of those shots fall. I want to see Kylan Boswell. I want to see some of those shots fall. I think between the both of them, they were what 2 for 8 or 9 or 11 or something like that. I think. Let me see here.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're 2 for 11.
yeah, 2 for 11, and that can't happen. I get the rebounds and the defense was great, but if this team is going to be an outstanding scoring team, you're going to need that. And again, like we talked about at halftime, you don't want to press on the issue, but now is the time. So there's no more excuses. You got to have guys walk up to the free throw line and make free throws. They've been a really good free throw shooting team. You know, I'm not complaining about 76% because any team that shoots over 75%, I mean, it's a good free throw percentage. But as a team tonight, they shot 7 for 25 from three, which is 28%. Oakland's was horrific. They were 4 of 25 for 16%. But Brad mentioned after the game, these are the kind of games you want to win and while you're playing because when you play in the Big Ten, you're going to face some teams that do that to you.
Yeah, I thought it was a kind of an ugly win. Again, Illinois would get a little bit of a buffer, and then to Oakland's credit, they would get it a little closer, and then Illinois would expand it, and so you was a little bit like watching somebody play the accordion, but that back and forth was not the most enticing. And I have to be honest with you, I think Jakusonis, he needs more than 3 shots. I think a couple things come to mind. First off, he did pass up some threes to go for the assist, and that's admirable. But I think a few of those, when you get the opportunity to step into the shot like he had, just stride into it and rocker step and see if you can make it. But the other part is that when he drives, he also needs to go to the basket. In other words, you don't just drive to dish. And I'd like to see him get a few more shots. And that may mean that you're taking the ball to the hoop and you're pressing that way. And certainly when he does go and get fouled, that guy's darn near automatic at the free throw line.
Yes, he is. And I want to see that too. Now that he can't shoot, he hasn't been great from behind the arc, but and I understand he's trying to get everybody involved and what I see right now, I'm just speaking from a coach's standpoint, I think right now, looking at the substitutions and how much they played, they're really trying to get these kids some confidence. Because for me personally, I look at the numbers, and you have what Trey White's a starter. He only played 14 minutes. Javon Gibbs Lawhorn came in and gave him some great minutes. He scored 7 points and only played 12 minutes. But then the other guys like Ben got 36 minutes, Kylan got 35, and Will Riley got 28 and KJ got 31. I'm fine with that, but you also want to get some minutes to the other guys because you're going to need them. Because here's what could happen. KJ struggles handling the basketball against pressure, say against Alabama. Then you're really going to need Trey White. You're really going to need Javon Gibbs Lawhorn. That's why I think also having these guys out here in games like this is important.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch Trey White. He ended up with 7 points. He shot 3 for 5. He didn't shoot poorly, had a couple rebounds, had 3 assists. But for a guy who shot 3 for 5, he didn't have the confidence or the swagger that you would expect of a guy who's his shot decent this year so far. And I'd like to see him not necessarily do anything different, just play with a little bit more confidence. So hopefully he'll gain that. And I do think that this game coming up next Wednesday against our friends at Alabama is going to be a big test for this team because right now, as they stand, they don't like being pushed around and pressure gives them a little bit of a fit. I think they're going to have to run everything through Ivisic in the middle because he's really right now he's the only guy that can consistently get his shot outside of Will Riley. And Will didn't have a great second half, but I do think you've got to play him an awful lot of minutes because when it comes down to it, he doesn't seem to mind taking the big shots and not that he's always taking the best shots, but he's going to need to start figuring some of that out because I think as the season goes, we're going to have more than just number 13 in the middle scoring points. So we're going to need to develop some consistency around him, and I think Will Riley is a big piece of that.
Mike, you talked about pressure. Let's go back to the Ole Miss game. How bad did they look when they received pressure against Ole Miss? This was another night where you saw that. So, you know what? You look from a scouting standpoint. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get in their face. I'm going to make it uncomfortable for them. And if you have a team like Alabama who can score, it could get really ugly quick. And that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to go on the road on a neutral side, but it's really on the road and embarrass yourself like that because you're right. A good team will take that away. Now, I will say this. I thought Ben Humrickhouse had some really good looks. He really did. His shots didn't fall. I didn't mind it because you've seen him have some good games. I want to see the other guys have some good games. And I know they're working on it. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that they're not because I know they are working on it. But now is the time. You have this schedule. What you can't do is lose all those games either. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, you've got some tough games on the schedule, and you cannot moral victories don't get you into the NCAA tournament. I mean, that's just the way it is. And over on the women's side, that early victory over Florida State at number 19 is critical because it'll help them in their quest to put together that resume. Illinois is going to have Tennessee. They're going to have Alabama. They're going to have Missouri. So they're going to have some teams that will allow them to build that resume above and beyond what's going on in the Big Ten. I will tell you that I have not been as much of a fan of the Mike Woodson Indiana regime, but they're physical. I don't know if they can shoot from outside, but they're physical. And that game worries me more now than it did 3 weeks ago.
To be honest with you, I have not seen any team yet from the Big Ten yet. I'm definitely not impressed with Michigan State. I don't think they're a good shooting team. I just don't. And I think Indiana, like you said, they are physical, but I've not seen it, and I'm not really sold on Purdue yet either. And I think a lot of the preseason hype was based off last year. And I'm not saying they're not good teams, but I don't think they're top 15 teams in the country because even when Illinois is playing their best, they can play with those teams. I've seen enough of that. But you're right; they're going to have an opportunity, plenty of opportunities to go on the road or on a neutral site to win. And the one thing, like I just said, you can't lose them all. You want to show that you belong for a number of reasons: for recruiting, for national rankings, for the postseason play, for confidence for the kids, the program, all of it, the whole 9 yards. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see if they've made any strides, if they'll step their game up against pressure. It's going to be loud. I know Illinois travels well, but it's still going to be considered probably a road game. But they need that.
Yeah, they do. And just reviewing that for folks, next Wednesday is their next game, so that's the 20th, and it's at 8 p.m. Central Time, and it'll be on the SEC network. So always want to tell people that because that's a little bit different than what Illinois usually plays on. Then they get a little bit of a break with Maryland East Shore and Little Rock. And then you go back on Turkey Day at 3 o'clock on CBS against Arkansas and Calipari. And then going on from there, you get a little bit of a couple games against Northwestern and Wisconsin to open Big Ten. And then you swing with Tennessee, and that's on December 14th. And then you play Missouri on December 22nd. And then Chicago State is the end of your preseason, and then you jump into the Big Ten. So this Illinois team is going to have opportunities then with Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee and Missouri. So 4 big games. Obviously, Brad Underwood is planning on going 4 for 4, but this team right now, they need a little bit of work. And I got to say, though, Ivasic certainly looks like he is ready to go. I thought I liked everything except one thing, Cad, and I don't know if you noticed this, but when he puts his base down and posts up, he has a tendency to crouch down to get the ball. He gets his shoulders and his head a little further than his knees, and if you notice, he reaches and he isn't quite as good at grabbing that pass in there when he's got his balance. And if you want to practice this at home, stand there with your head and your hands in front of your knees and imagine somebody pushing you from behind as you're trying to catch a basketball. I think he needs to be a little more straight up, and I think he needs to keep I don't think he needs to get his shoulders and his head quite so forward, and I think he'd have better balance.
There were a couple of passes tonight that I thought he probably could have got. Some of that, I think it's his fault. Some of it, I think some of it is where he's receiving the ball, who he's receiving it from. Other than Casperas, I think he's probably the one guy on the team who can put the ball in position for him to score. Trey Wright tried to slip. There was a screen that Ibisevic tried to slip, and the ball was behind him. So I don't think some of the guys are able to put the ball where he can score. And you got to remember, he's 7'1",
Yep.
and trying to bend down. As mobile as we see that he is, him having to bend down to get the ball is different. And a lot of coaches don't know if they do it as much today because the players they're different. Back in the day, you never threw the ball to a big guy at their feet or below their knees. If you did, you ran for it. But with him being mobile, it may be a little different. Now, I want to just make another comment real quick. You talk about the schedule. This is me. I'm going to tell you, I've seen Alabama and Arkansas play. Now, Alabama's ranked second in the country, but my opinion, I think Arkansas is the best team Illinois is going to play. Arkansas scares me. I think they are better than Alabama, and I certainly don't
What
think
what scares you when you take a look at the Arkansas team?
Mike, they guard and they make life hell. They really get up, and when you turn the ball over, their guards are so quick and they can get out on the floor and they make it tough for you to get shots, kind of the way Duke did. I think the one advantage that we have, if there's any advantage, is the Bisic going against his brother. I think we got the better brother. Is what I really think. I just watched the way when they played Kansas, and I don't care if Hunter Dickinson wasn't playing. They dismantled Kansas, and I don't think Kansas is number one in the country. I don't. I still, even though Duke lost, I was impressed with them last night. Kentucky beat them, but the way Arkansas played, Mike, for the fans, if you get a chance to see them, or you can go back and watch a game, you'll see what I'm talking about. Alabama's just talented. They don't make it uncomfortable for you to score, and that's what Illinois struggles with. We just talked about Ole Miss, and we talked about Oakland tonight. That is the game that I really think that could cause them a lot of problems.
And one of the things that's a challenge, I don't think people really understand how good the coaching is in the Big Ten. Yeah, we talk about Greg Gard or this guy or that guy. Now that the dead weight's out of the conference with Juwan Howard, you've got a lot of coaches that are really good. And what really scares me is a situation where, let's say, an Arkansas jumps in your jock and causes you some problems. These Big Ten coaches they're all gonna try to do that, and they're gonna try to emulate that, and I think that could be a real challenge for the team. So you want them to be prepared to deal with that, and I just think part of this is I think this team's gonna be a little different. Last year, as fans, we could depend on Terrence Shannon Jr. unless some crazy legal issue got in his way. But we could depend on him. You knew he was good for
20
I
every
don't know,
night.
18 points every night as a minimum, and that's a bad night, so to speak. And you knew you had that. I think this year it's going to be Ivisic who's going to be the guy that we can get probably 18 out of. I do think the revolving cast of people, I think it's going to be different who's there every night. But I do think if you get Kasparis to get comfortable where he's getting 14 a game, 12 a game, something along those lines. Now all of a sudden you're cooking because you got that 32 points that you need to get the engine running, and then it can be whoever is hot. I'm starting to feel like Riley is going to be one who's got that opportunity. But tonight, when the team shoots 41.8% against Oakland, that does give you a little bit of pause because Oakland doesn't have the athletes at any position that you will see with Alabama, regardless of if Alabama is number 20 instead of number 2.
Oh, for sure, Mike, without a doubt. And when we talk about athletes, and how about this? We've not talked about Tennessee yet, and that's another team that I really think that could pose some problems or cause some issues for them. I think to be objective and to take the orange Kool-Aid glasses off, I'm going to tell you, in order for Illinois to beat them, the way I see it, from what I've seen all the teams play, they're going to have to shoot the basketball. They can't go out there and have turnovers, unforced turnovers. You can't go 7 for 25 from 3 to turn the ball over. 18 turnovers in the first 2 games. They had 9. You have to take care of the ball. But then how are you going to respond when you get hit in the chest? Because they're going to make it tough for you. They're not just going to stand there and just roll over. And they're playing Illinois. They knew what they were last year. Illinois is not ranked, but they know that they're going to be playing a good team. And I'm going to tell you, like, even though we talked about what makes Illinois uncomfortable, Illinois should do the same thing. When I watched Alabama play the other night, I'm not saying they're not, and I don't base it off one game. I've seen enough, but I just, there's opportunities there. Take advantage of them, but now is time. I know the coaches are telling them that. They don't need people in the media or fans or what have you tell them what they need to do because they watch the game. They know what's at stake.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Anybody else that caught your eye? I thought Draven Gibbs Lawhorn played good. 12 minutes, 7 points, 3 rebounds, which I thought was good. Now, a little high in the turnovers tonight, but I was surprised he didn't get a few more minutes. And while Morez is still looking a little bit robotic on the offensive end in terms of when he gets the ball, I don't think it's going to get better by not playing him. And the other thing is his rebounding. Even in 8 minutes, he had 3 rebounds. I do think he adds something, even if he's not as good on the court. But tonight, I'm not certain if you take Ivisic out of the game with his point production, maybe this would be closer than what we would like to see.
And I mentioned before at halftime, I would like to see them play together. I don't see any harm in that. I don't know. A lot of coaches don't like to do it. Some will. I wouldn't have a problem seeing them to back to Draven Gibbs Lawhorn. It's tough because he brought a lot of energy and he knocked down a big 3. He gets to the rim. He's a good free throw shooter. And I'll tell you, he's a really good on the ball defender as well. I wish he could have got more minutes. I thought in the second half when they became complacent, I thought Coach Underwood was going to go to him because he gets going on one of those heaters. He can change a game by himself, which we've seen him do a couple of times. He's one guy I want to see gets more minutes, Mike. And you're right about Marez Johnson. Marez just looks uncomfortable out there right now from an offensive standpoint, but you can't get that fluidness. You can't feel comfortable when you only play 10 minutes a game. But I know right now they're starting to put their rotations together and who they feel comfortable with. In fairness to the coaches, we're not there every day. They see things that we don't see.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do like Merez's spark on the defensive end. And I'm always going to have the bias to defense, being that I had no talent and I wasn't very quick, so I had to play defense. But I do think he brings a lot to the table from the defensive side of the ball. Any other thoughts on this before we take this one and get off the air? And we'll come back on in a few minutes when Brad gets on.
Remember the Illinois Purdue football game when Illinois barely won and people were freaking out? You know what? That's one of the 6 wins. This is the way I see this Oakland game tonight. It's ugly. They're 3-0, and it's a win because in a month, nobody's going to care about it. It's just going to be one of those wins that's on your resume. I would have liked to see a better performance heading into Alabama, but that didn't happen. So now we'll see. They'll roll the ball out, and we'll see what happens. And it's one game. There's no reason to panic. It's one game. A lot of teams, every team doesn't play well every night. And it could have been worse. If Oakland would have made some threes, this could have been an L tonight.
Yeah, it could have been. And then on the other hand, the other thing that I think people tend to forget about is Illinois was part of the reason why they had a hard time shooting the 3-point shot, because Illinois was running them off the line, playing defense that kind of made them not shoot very effectively from there. And ironically, they only made 4 for 25, and Illinois made 7 for 25, and not a markedly different, but it does, when you get down to the end of the game, those 9 points can be really important. And I think that Illini defense was really critical in this. So we will talk to people in a few minutes when we get Brad Sturdy on. Until then, have a safe drive. Or, of course, if you're listening to this later on, Brad will be right here after the break. Thank you.
This is the Run My Own Business dream. This is the colleges paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
Hey, folks, this is Mike Cagley with Brad Sturdy. We're going to give you a few minutes here for your drive home on a beautiful rainy night in central Illinois. We only get Brad in the car if we can make sure that the weather's somewhat challenging for him. Brad, you got an opportunity to see central Illinois in the dark, in the rain. That's the worst time that for old people like us to drive. Give us a kind of a summary of what you saw. I thought from watching from afar that this game, no team could ever get rhythm for an extended period of time. What jumped out at you?
It was ugly. There were 36 combined turnovers. There was one stretch in the second half where the teams combined to shoot 2 for 22 over about 6 minutes. To be honest, they could have stopped at half court and pulled up and probably scored more. It was pretty ugly in that regard. But it's kind of expected. Oakland wants to play that way. I wrote about it in the preview. I talked about how they want to have long possessions and then make you take a bad shot because you get anxious and want to do that.
Yep.
That's what they did. And it played out exactly. They play that kind of a weird matchup zone, and they took away. They didn't come and help inside. They basically said they forced guys. They didn't let guys have straight line drives. They forced them. Campy kept telling him, you got to force him to nail, which is there in the paint, and force him there, so he hit him. He wanted to, basically, you think about his philosophy, it was very similar to philosophy what Underwood likes to do. He doesn't want them to shoot threes. Now, Illinois got 25 threes off despite that, but a lot of those were in transition. Now, Oakland plays that defense. They didn't help. They didn't collapse. So then Ivicic got a ton of shots in the paint. They put KJ in there. He got a couple free throws. And Illinois was able to get inside, but it's very difficult to have a rhythm against that defense. And what happens is when then you miss some shots, and then you get anxious. You start forcing a few here and there. And you saw that. Illinois is a young team, and they didn't stay patient. Now, the one thing that I did, Illinois continued to defend. They did a really nice job defensively for the most part. Those stretch of the first half, I thought they were a little soft. They got beat on some cross screens in the post, but overall they did a really good job defensively, defending ball screens, contesting shots, and learning how to win a tough game, a game that's physical. That game was rough. That was as physical as a Michigan State game. That was just one of those teams where these guys were just beating on each other, and it allowed them to grab, they allowed them to hold, they allowed them to move on screens a lot, just a lot of those things. So it was one of those rough and tumble games, and they were able to come out with a win, and hopefully you learn from it and you grow from it. And next week's going to be a lot different because Alabama's going to get up and down. They're going to want to run. It's going to be fast-paced. It's going to be totally different animals. Trying to extrapolate what's going to happen in the future out of this game isn't very, very easy to do.
Yeah, the only concern I have after watching this, because it is a team that may not be young, but it is a team with not a lot of big-time college experience yet, is if I'm their coach, I'm going to try to make it as physical as I can to see if I can knock these guys off their line and see if I can get in their head a little bit and make it hard for them to play. Beyond that, I don't know what else I really got out of this game.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I do think this team's young, too. As far as Will Riley, even we talked about Kylan Boswell being his third year. Remember, he came out early, right?
Yep.
So he's really a sophomore age-wise, even though he's in his third year playing. Ivicic is 21, but he's just a sophomore. Well, but he's not played college basketball, and this is a different game. Underwood made a great point talking about KJ and struggling at the 5 turnovers night. He said he's never seen a zone because they don't play zone in Europe. They play man-to-man, so it's a different thing. He wants to get in ball screens and go, and he's a great passer. You see him do some things when he gets in space. But against the zone, it was different. It was hard to make reads. It was hard to find some things. I still thought, even though he only had 3 assists, they missed a lot of chippies. He probably could have had 6 or 7 assists very easily. And then it looks a little different when you have 7 assists and 5 turnovers instead of 3 assists and 5 turnovers. This is that youth, and they'll get better. And I thought that they showed some promise even in a game that wasn't very good because they're getting better at doing the things we were worried about all year, and that's defending. They have to get stronger with the basketball, though. They still make a lot of soft plays and get the ball taken from them. You got to be a little bit tougher with the ball, and I think that's going to be something I guarantee Brad Underwood's going to focus on over the next week.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. As I look at it, obviously, Ivicic was very good today. He is, I guess, Illinois for the time being. Brad Underwood and Matt Painter know how to go through a really strong 5. And, boy, he is going to do a wonderful job for that Illini team on nights when things aren't going well.
Yeah, and wait till he starts making threes. That's what he was known to be more of a three-point shooting big who could just stretch the floor and things like that. He's been really good inside. He's got that little mid-range, little floater, and he's gonna be really good. I think he's literally an all-conference level big man. I think he can be an all-conference. Well, that's pretty good. What's he averaging? 18 a game right now, so almost 18 points a game through 3 games. I'm not saying he's going to average that, but you get 15 and 7 or something like that from the center position. Man, you throw in Merez coming in for some energy. He gets 3 points and 4 rebounds, and that's a great duo at the center spot.
Did Merez get a little less time tonight? Maybe less so because of his play, but the fact that they really couldn't have Tomislav sitting on the bench because they needed his scoring?
I think it was a combination. Early in the game, Merez came in and he was playing, and he played 4 minutes in each half to give Tomislav a break, and he didn't run the floor. And so he didn't run the floor. He jogged down and didn't go, and Underwood immediately called him out on it. And he said, hey, you got to run the floor. And he took him out of the game. He didn't go back in the first half. So I think there was a combination there. I saw when Tomislav was out of the game there, they immediately put, in the second half, they put Merez in. They put Merez on the dunker spot and put KJ then in the middle. and the changeup what they were doing against that zone. So that was, I think Perez is going to have different matchups that he's going to fit better with. This was a tough matchup for him today. This was a playing against that zone, the way they play and the way they do things. It was a tough matchup. A lot of learning things they're going to go on. You saw it was trouble. Really, you think about the freshmen, whether it's Will Riley, Perez Johnson, or Kasparis, they all struggled tonight. And because they hadn't seen anything like this, to be honest, and they probably never have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. One of the things that we talked about earlier is it fair to say that he's definitely a team player, but Illinois needs him to shoot more than 3 times a game?
I think so, but you have to also, he's taking 20 free throw attempts too. That's another 10 shots. So is he taking, is it 6, 7 shots a game? He's got a pretty good usage rate, but I think he'll get more comfortable as he goes along. He's trying to get everybody involved, trying to feel things out. And he's young. People forget that he's still a freshman. I know he's talented, and I know he does a lot of great things, but he's a freshman. We talked about it before the season. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. There might be a game next week there might be a game in a week or two where he puts up 20 points and that could happen. But, I just don't think there's going to be a game where he is always scoring. Underwood talked about this too. It was hard for him to feel what he was supposed to do against this zone. He hadn't seen it before. He wasn't seeing practice. Their thing was, the first team they played was trapped every ball screen. So what do you have to do if they're point guard and you get trapped? You give it up. You create a 4-on-3 behind you.
Yep.
Then they hard edge. When they hard edge, that creates an opening for somebody else. They hard edge, he has 13 assists. So I think sometimes not everybody's going to play that way. We're going to find people who switch. We're going to see people who trail, and then he's going to have pull-up floaters. He's going to have things like that. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen. And sometimes people are going to go under screen. We saw Oakland do that, and Boswell hit a 3 there at the end. So sometimes that's going to be Kasparis. So sometimes it's how they defend you, and what he has to do is make the right read. That's the most important thing. Like sometimes people worry about who's taking shots or who's doing this. The reality is you got to make the right read, and you got to make sure that you're taking good shots no matter who takes them.
I thought it was nice to see. I thought in the first half, Riley was more effective than obviously the second half. But the thing I like about him is he doesn't seem to lose confidence. He's got the ability. He believes he's going to score, and I think that's going to come in valuable later in the year.
No question. He thinks he can score, and because he's a great scorer.
Yeah.
That's what he is, and that's what you want him to do. Now, the one thing I'll say about Riley, is that I thought in the second half too, the physicality of the game wears him down a little bit because he's not physically strong yet.
Yep.
So I think maybe that's too many minutes for him at this point. Probably more like 24 minutes would be better against a team that's this physical, especially. Okay. And so you see him, a lot of those little floaters, little shots were short. They went in and out, or they missed. Those are shots he normally makes. He was I think he was 1 for 6 from 2-point range. Those are all right at the rim, right in the 5 to 7 foot little floaters, things that he does. That's what he does. So that's where I think he'll get better as he gets stronger, but also I think it's a less physical teams. He won't be as worn down. The other thing is, it's the first time probably in his life he's had to chase guys off ball screens, guys off screens off the ball. Before it was just like, okay, well, I'm 6'8", 6'9", I got long arms, I can just contest that shot without really going hard. Now you got to really fight. You got to really defend. You got to fight on that end, and so it's hard. Even though it's not saying that people aren't in good shape, it's just different. Taking the physical pounding of running into screens and getting screened, and then coming down on offense and getting bodied, it's hard, and it's an adjustment he's going to have to make, and he will. But maybe he's not quite there, ready for the 28 to 30 minutes right now.
Nope, totally understand that. Any other things here as we get into the late hour here? We want to make sure you can get an opportunity to drive home safely. Any other thoughts that come to mind as you reflect on the game?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is you can't extrapolate what's going to happen. Illinois is not as good as they're not going to score 112 against like they did against DIU all the time. They're not going to score 66 very often either. So you just have to. Every game is different. Every matchup is different. Illinois has seen 3 different styles of play through 3 games, and they'll see a totally different style next week against Alabama. This is what you want a young team to do. I'll tell you this one thing about Brad Underwood. He wanted them to see these different ways, styles of play, because that's how you learn and grow with a young team. And the other thing to remember is last year Illinois went to the Elite Eight. They were pretty good. They struggled against Oakland and trailed most of the first half, and then ended up winning by 12 points or something like that. So it's not. Sometimes we get caught up in this, and every game's different. Every game's a different battle. You go out and win that one game. You can't win 5 or 6 games in one night. No matter how many shots you make, you can't carry over the points or miss. It doesn't carry over either. I just don't think you can take too much away from this other than it's a great learning experience about understanding you can grind out a win. Because when they get into the Big Ten, there's going to be some games that are like this.
Oh God, yes, and you just want to get out with a W and call it a day. So yeah, we've got Alabama coming up on November 20th, and then of course Arkansas on November 28th, and Tennessee on December 14th, Missouri on December 22nd. 4 pretty tough non-conference games. What do you think successful would be for the Illini in terms of a record playing 4 teams that difficult?
And don't forget Duke. Duke's also part of this non-conference too.
That was in February, so I figured, I figured we could hold off on Duke. But I was just thinking in the next few weeks.
And they also have in those 4 non-conference games, I think 2-2 would be great.
Okay.
If you go 2-2 there, that's fantastic. Anything better than that is I think it's gravy. But the other part about this, they also have 2 Big Ten games there in December, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So they've got a couple Big Ten games they've got to win. So there's 6 high major games in basically the next 6 high major games. You'd love to go 4-2 in those games. I think that would be seen as a win. Both Big Ten games are winnable, but they won't be easy. So they're going to have to really compete to get there before they head out. Then after Missouri, then you have the one critter game, Chicago State.
Yep.
And then you go west, right? You got Oregon and Washington. Little road trip. You got a lot. It's not going to be much. There's only a couple easy games left on the schedule. If that's the reality. Chicago State, Maryland Eastern Shore, etc. So they've got to really battle and keep getting better so that they can have a chance to put themselves in a good position, a good seed in the NCAA tournament, and a chance to win the Big Ten.
Yep. I totally agree with you. Any final thoughts as we reflect on this game?
No, you got a week. Brad Underwood gets a week with this team. I think that's great, and we'll get a see. The other thing I would caution people: Alabama has not looked very good either. They've grinded out some wins and only won by 8 over East State. And then they also had I think it was Arkansas State, where they actually were up 3 at halftime, won by 9. So Arkansas has also struggled. So these are all teams that have so many new faces on all these teams. They're all trying to figure each other out. And it's just going to come down to Illinois got a week here to get ready. And Brad Underwood's going to love the fact that he can now harp on these little things, ball security and stuff for the next week. I wouldn't want to be at the practice where they're working on not turning it over the next week, because they're going to make sure they're a little bit tougher.
Yeah, that is totally true. And the great thing about Underwood is he's consistently proven that his teams get better as the season goes on. So that gives Illini fans, we're very similar, Ked and I. This is just a game that you look at and you move on to the next one. You don't get too upset about it, but I know people got a little spoiled averaging 101 points a game or whatever it was the first couple games.
Yep. Yeah, they're still averaging 80-some, so it's not terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I look at this team and I look at Ivicic is scoring like a machine. If you get a couple guys feeling comfortable and consistent, Kasparis and Will Riley, they're each averaging 10 to 14 a game. Now all of a sudden you're cooking with fire. That's definitely a developmental step to keep these guys moving in that direction. And there's probably going to be some tough moments in those 4 games as well, as these guys learn in a trial by fire, playing some really good competition.
No question.
Perfect.
Should be fun.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, Brad. We really appreciate it. Drive safe as you head back from the game at the State Farm Center.
It only rains when I'm driving home and doing a post-game, evidently.
Isn't that the truth? As we watch it go totally dark there in the rain. Thanks, Brad.
All right. See you, bye.
So, folks, if you enjoyed that, of course, you could subscribe to IlliniGuys.com. It's only 27 cents a day. When you get that opportunity, we would love to have you here. We have a community of people who talk Illini sports, they talk guy stuff, and it is a lot of fun. Of course, we have message boards, and that's what really makes it different. Instead of that passive thing where you jump on and maybe you have a subscription to The Athletic and you read what somebody has to tell you and then you move on to your day. With IlliniGuys.com, you can read something that Brad says, or you can hear something that came up in a podcast. You can start a thread and ask us what we were meaning, and obviously we will tell you, of course. So you get that one-on-one communication. And of course, there are plenty of other Illini fans who are definitely willing to give you an opinion on just about any topic under the sun. So we'd love to have more people there. Just 27 cents a day. You can subscribe, and you get 6 days for free to kick the tires. On the 7th day, we send the bill, and then you've got a subscription for a year. Please take a look at that as well. And of course, if you want to follow Brad or myself on Twitter, you can get Brad at Sturdy32 or me at Mike Cagley. And that's an easy way to get Illini news and all sorts of general guy stuff in your feed. And we don't talk politics, so you don't have to worry about that. That makes it a little bit more fun and a little less stressful. And of course, we have our Illini Guys Sports Spectacular. That's our 2-hour radio show. Please go ahead and subscribe there. It comes out on podcast, or you can go to IlliniGuys.com, hit the radio button, find out which day of the week, Friday or Saturday, your favorite station has it on, and tune in at that time. There are over 20 stations in the state of Illinois alone that run that show, and we are proud to present that to you on a weekly basis. We have our Big Ten show. It's another 2-hour show, Big Sports Radio. You can subscribe at about any podcast distributor there as well. We would love to have more people subscribing to that. And as a final thing to do, IlliniGuys.com has a YouTube channel. Please subscribe there. It allows you to get these type of things, and you don't have to do much. It just shoots over to you, and it is there for you to watch. If you're an Illini fan, if you're a Big Ten fan, if you're just a sports fan in general, we would love to have you. And of course, we will do our halftime show during the football game this week as Illinois takes on Michigan State at Memorial Stadium Saturday, November 16th, 1:30 p.m. Central, and it will also be broadcast on FS1. Until then, folks, go Illini.